Rock.
3, 2, 1, and we're live. Hello and welcome, guys. This is Hot Pot Podcast. We are back with one of my favorites, Dr. Brett Gilbert. He is an endodontist from Chicago, which I'm sure you all know by now. One of my first Instagram friends I actually met in person, actually. So here we are with Dr. Brett. How has your day been, man?
Oh, it's been great, man. I mean, it's Saturday. It's a holiday weekend. So like I was just saying, it's so easy to feel balanced, have a nice work-life balance when you're at home and just relaxing. But no, man, I feel great. And as we're going to talk about, I just want to have the opportunity to share some of the tools that I
Yeah.
use to stay level-headed. Mental emotional health right now is the thing every human being needs to be focused on, and we all have to start within. We have to look at ourselves. Where are we? Be honest. Sit in silence for a few minutes and feel your feels. Don't try to numb them or push them away or ignore them. And when you do that, then you become this open beacon to look in and help others that are struggling. Because as we know, as this crisis continues on, and now we're in 2021, and there's a lot of hope in the air. But as January turns to February and the situation doesn't change all that much, it's really important that we focus on mental emotional health. And that's really, to me, what life work balance is about, is finding that ability to take your mental and emotional, understand it, feel it, work with it, and move on. And sometimes being able to do that can be a tremendous service to others. So that's really my main focus right now is mental emotional health. And one thing I'd like to invite all your viewers to do is I've been named the director of intellectual wellness of the Dental Mental Network, and right now that's a really incredible, growing, supportive Facebook group,
Yeah.
and it's incredible. It's such a great, safe space to share, whether you have mental, emotional, diagnoses, or you're struggling, or maybe just you want to be someone who can support others around you. It's really great. So it's open to all dental professionals. I can share a link with you. You can
Yeah,
put in the
I'll
show
put it in the
notes.
description as soon as I get that link. That's really easy to do. You kind of led us in perfectly. The title we went for today was A Life Worth Living, and I think it's one of those things that 2020, the year that it was, changed a lot of people's perspectives, changed a lot of the way that we think, a lot of the way that we do things, whether professionally, personally, the way we socialize. All these things kind of flipped on their head, and people for a moment were stuck and sat doing nothing, and you evaluate where you are in your life, what you want to do, what you've been doing before. Are you in tune with your goals or your personal ambitions in life? And of course, you're probably one of the best people to speak to because, like we've heard, you're involved in one of these groups, so you're the perfect guy to bring on.
Thanks, man. Thanks. I mean, what's interesting, and you just mentioned how we met personally, and it was a beautiful meeting. It was just in February. It was literally probably 2 weeks
11
before
months ago.
COVID. Yeah, COVID hit the world. This was like February 20th, and by March 16th, the world was shut down. So we really came cross paths at that moment. And, in that day, I was doing a lecture at Chicago Midwinter, and, I incorporated meditation into the lecture. I was already on this track of recognizing the stresses, the strain of being a dentist. I mean, being a dentist is one of the most stressful positions, functions, jobs that anyone could take on. And we often choose it when we're so young. We have no idea what we're getting into. So I think that this area of thinking is really beautiful. I think a life worth living is so well said, Jabir, because it's like, look, we're young right now, like we're youngish,
Yeah.
wherever you stand. And, you have all these goals and aspirations, but it's really about what are you doing, feeling, enjoying right now. And that right now is our only time. We only live in right now. So, if someone watches this and it's 3 months from now, guess what? When you watch it, it's right now.
Yeah.
It's always right now. And so I think that we need to take stock of how we can live our best life each and every day. And I love sharing how I do it. And the reason that I love sharing it is because 2.5 years ago, I wasn't living my best life and I was struggling. And my story really starts with really hitting a point of feeling burnt out, and the scare, the fear, the worry that that brought into my soul told me that I had to shift. I had to do something different. And thank goodness I had some wonderful supportive friends that led me into a path of personal growth and development, which was for me like it was like me being a fish and dropping me into water. It was just like this is what I've been waiting for. And so as I go along my path and I continue to grow and work on it every day, they call it doing the work, working on yourself. The most simplest way to describe it is just that if you can sit in silence and feel your feels, sometimes it's joy, sometimes it's worry, sometimes it's deep, deep pain. And it just comes up naturally because it wants to come up, it wants to leave you. But one thing I want to share with the viewers that I think is really, really poignant. I've been really into, I don't know if you've heard of Vishen Lakhiani. He's the founder of Mind
I've
Valley.
not come across
Um,
him, no.
oh, you got to listen to him. Vishen. You can YouTube him. He's on Instagram, but he talks about how wounds are where the light enters us. So we have to look at our pain as this beautiful opportunity as opposed to something that we run away from. And I think a lot of our problems come from running away from pain. And so, anyway, I thought that was cool. I just, I love being here. And I think a life worth living is going to look different for everyone. But I think it's based and rooted in right now. What are you living in this moment? Because all we have is this moment.
Yeah, no, time isn't guaranteed. And I think that's one of the really worrying but also liberating things about it. The only thing you're guaranteed is a certain amount of time in this world, and it's what you do with that time, which is allotted to you. Obviously, we don't know when that end comes. That's completely unknown, and what comes after is up for your personal beliefs and maybe, I don't know, debate or whatever you want to call it, but it's down to what you believe happens afterwards. So it's one of those things that sometimes you do, in quiet moments, think, okay, well, what have I really done, and what is that enough for what I want to have done? And I kind of broke this down, and I sent you the show notes earlier. So I'll rattle off the headings, and we'll tick these off as we go through the session. So we talked a little bit about your personal growth story, which we'll get into a little bit more. I want to hear a bit more about, how you felt going through dental school, through endo school, then in the early years as a young endodontist, and then becoming a little more experienced as you are now, and how that's changed, how things have changed along those lines, how relationships fit into that, how your work life fits in with your relationships. Have you been able to keep up with fitness and health, and then also emotional well-being? So those are some of the things which are really key. And beyond that, giving back, which you're very, very good at, as I've found. So a big thank you for everyone in the dental community, I think, for that. And then how you're able to keep spiritually on track, and that could be by religion or other things, that people have different methods of doing that. And then there were some sort of different things where I was looking for definitions of what makes a balanced life, and a couple of things kept on popping up. It was the environment you're in, or environmental concerns. And I think there's a lot of ways you can take that. Having some adventure, some creation of skills, and having a creative life as well. So sorry guys for rattling off a little list there, but
Love it.
but that's our agenda for today.
Let me start with one thing that based death. And I've been really studying death, and death always made me incredibly uncomfortable, right? We fear it. We will do anything to avoid it. But what is really true about death is it is absolutely the best teacher of life, right? Because of what you said, our time is completely unknown. So you want to make the most of every day. And I'll give you credit, Jabir. I really respect you for the way that you're living your life. You're doing things, you're stepping outside of yourself. You started a podcast, Dentists of Insta is blowing up. You've become this beautiful channel for students and dentists, and from a really global perspective. Well, that took you looking at yourself and saying, I want to do something. I want to make an impact, and then actually following through and doing it. And that's one of the hardest things for us. But sometimes when you look at death and you say, well, I could be gone tomorrow. What mark if I left? And that becomes very motivating. So I've found it interesting. I really have become a student of Ram Dass, who's a beautiful philosopher and guru, and someone, if you're not aware of him, there's a wonderful, amazing album by on Spotify by East Forest. It's called. You can just type in East Forest and Ram Dass, but Ram Dass talks a lot about death as being sort of like this awakening, into the next phase of your soul's journey. And I think looking at the soul and the human, sometimes we often have a difficult time putting those together. But Ram Dass talks a lot about how human beings can live on two planes. We can be this human body doing this human experience full of pain, sometimes suffering, sometimes joy, but also be this soul that's connected, sort of looking down. We're much broader than that. And when we open ourselves up, I think what it feeds to, and what I want to lead into with your first question about my journey in dentistry, is the idea that our soul is here to learn something. You're here to learn something. But I think that one of the biggest things we have to learn is how to love ourselves, how to recognize that we are enough, that we are worthy, that we are here and we are amongst our humans, and that we have the right to stand up and be who we are, be our genuine self. And I would say that as my life has gone on and I've undergone these really significant changes in the last couple of years, I find that it's less obvious to others that I've changed so much.
Yeah.
And the reason is because how I present outwardly probably is very similar, but how I present inwardly is where my big shift has come. So as I went through dental school, I really, I put my head down. I would, no wall or barrier would get in my way. I would find a way to move around it. I never tried to bust through walls. I always tried to sort of move around them, find my way to get to the end line. And so I always was very successful that way because I was willing to adapt. I was willing to change. I was willing to learn. I was willing to put in the extra work. And so I had a really successful dental school experience, although very stressful. And I think for a lot of your viewers who are a bit younger can relate. Sometimes it's really hard when you're single, you're trying to find your mate. There's obviously during COVID, it's a little different, but you also socially as like a 20-something, you want to be out and you want to be in nightlife. And so you have this huge dichotomy of like this studious student and then someone who wants to be out and be young. And I found that oftentimes was difficult for me because I would really enjoy both ends of the spectrum. So that's, again, your work-life balance. And fortunately, I was able to find my way through. Endo training was the most humbling time of my life. And I'll include my first year in practice with that. So my 2 years of residency, my first year of practice, because it's like, Jabir, my hands couldn't quite do what my mind wanted to do. I knew what the end result was.
I'm right there with you right now. I can imagine
Right?
it. The last time I was sat there with the endo, I showed you that access cavity today or not? Where I had the file just tucked into the MB2. I said I couldn't get any further than this little tip, 0.01 millimeters in there, and I was thinking, I know what I'm supposed to do. I just don't have the motor skills built up to do it.
Yep. Yep. And everyone in dentistry can relate to this. And so that's where self-worth, self-love comes into play, because we all have to learn, we all have to start somewhere, but we want to be where we're going right away. And so oftentimes we beat ourselves up. I know I personally was so rough on myself and just couldn't accept that I wasn't able to do it and felt so bad about the patient and this and that. But what I try to tell young doctors, and I love mentoring doctors, is, so we're in practice. And for the one thing that might happen that in your mind is very negative, maybe it's a procedural accident, maybe something went wrong, or the fill didn't look good, or your crown prep wasn't great. You have to look at the fact that that experience is such an important lesson. And think about the hundreds, if not thousands of patients down the line, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, that will benefit from you having learned that lesson in this moment. And so I struggled a lot in my early days because I was very hard on myself. I was seeking perfection, which is impossible to achieve. And it brought me down. I mean, it kind of brought me down. And then slowly but surely, you have to come to a moment where you say, I have a great friend, Dr. Chris Hahn, who says, you are only responsible for doing your very best.
When
You're
you're
not
in that
responsible
moment,
for being perfect.
sorry to jump, but when you're in that moment
No, go
of
ahead.
feeling like you couldn't do it, or you weren't quite getting there, were you aware of these feelings at the time, or were you just stuck in the monotony of going to work, and trying to get through it? or did it take something to jolt you out and say, oh, well, actually, what I'm, like you say, the best you can do is the best you can do, and that's good.
Yeah, I actually, so at that point in time, I actually, because I was going through a lot of changes in my life, that was probably a one time where I actually sought some therapy, as far as like, how do I help myself not hurt myself so much? And the therapist at that positive and really a great influence on me, he said, look, Brett, what you're experiencing, all it tells me is that you have a desire to be great. Hurt you so much that you can't be that great whatever doctor or person or what. All it tells you that you're heading right there.
Yeah.
This is just part of your journey, and that really really helped me. And so sometimes, a therapist, a good friend, a confidant can just hear you and listen, and all of a sudden what really the benefit comes is that you hear yourself, and you actually start to resonate with yourself by just expressing. Self expression is such an important part of life. And so that was really helpful, like to say, yeah, you know what, I really do want to be great. And that's why I care so much. And if I was not caring this much, then how great am I really going to be? And that really helped me. And I hope that that helps some of the other young dentists out there, because I think what I always say is you have to be kind to yourself and you have to be true to who you are. And if you walk into the operatory as your genuine self, patients will
Yeah.
know. It will resonate. If you walk in trying to be someone else, then that's going to be a problem, and you're not going to be as comfortable, and neither will your patient.
Yeah, I think that's really, really important. Um, and then obviously time has gone on and you've come through that period. Um, how did you get to the point you are now? Because you're obviously well, much more centered than you were previously by the sounds of it. Was this by the help of people like Dr. Christian, Pavel, dental yogis, etc.? Were those guys instrumental for you?
Yeah, so my journey. So I've been in practice now for 18 years. So it's been a long ride, and I think from a clinical standpoint, the confidence really comes around year three. So from year 3 to 5 is when you really start to feel like you're in your groove. So clinically, I've been doing great. I continue to try to strive to grow and to do new things. And, I do a lot more surgery than I used to. I try new instruments, I try new techniques. So from a clinical standpoint, it's really helpful. From a mental emotional standpoint, you do sort of realize that things are going to happen no matter how brilliant you are, no matter how you're going to have issues that come up. And so now they don't resonate in the same detrimental way. It's
Hmm.
still learning. It's like, oh God, like I've learned this before, but in this situation I just learned it again. Keep it in mind, but I don't take it home and beat myself up over it. It's just, you realize that it's part of dental practice, and that's been very very helpful. But yeah, in the past couple of years, having going through and diving into personal growth and development, I've done some intensive emotional intelligence training. I'm just a student of growth, and really I seek it. I look for it. I've worked with coaches. I've been doing energy healing as a, like, getting energy healing, learning more about it. I always have some kind of crystal in my hand. As you see right here, I've got a crystal. This is related to my throat chakra, so that I can really communicate clearly with you. So I'm really into sort of using all the tools around me, the energy around me, to be able to be my best self. And the answer your question, the reason why and what's really helped, you mentioned, Dr. Christian Pavel, my boy, the dental yogis, and we have this whole tribe, the Revive tribe. But having a supportive tribe is really important. And I'll tell you why, because I think as you get older, you take these lessons, and like if I share them with you, Javier, and then when you're at the chair, this helps you, then that is like a huge victory for all of us, right? And
Hmm.
so I think that, when you can look at your journey, even with the painful parts, and think to yourself, well, when I tell my story later, this is going to help someone else figure out how to get on their journey and get to be their best self. And that's really like a great way to put a frame around your life, to say, I'm not struggling in this, miserable existence by myself. If I work and figure out a way out of this, or figure out a way to get better, I can help others. And I think that that's really really important, and I love that part of it. I think it's mentoring is a beautiful thing, because mentoring in life is, we are constantly mentors
Yeah.
and mentees all at the same time. And sometimes the relationships are really short lived, sometimes they last a lifetime,
Yeah.
but we're constantly helping each other. And I think that that's really what it comes down to. And one of the best things again, Vishen, who I was mentioning earlier, he has this quote that I love. And it's like, if you want to be inspiring, be inspired,
Yeah.
right? So if we're inspired by others, then we become inspiring to others. And I love that, man.
Yeah, I think that makes sense because if you're seeing someone else's work and going, "Oh my God, wow, how are they doing this? How are they doing that?" and you've got that wonderment or interest within you, whatever you're doing, some in some way, it's gonna, whatever you put in comes back out. Um, Same thing with relationships, which we'll kind of move on to in a bit. Whatever you put into a relationship, you get out of it. Whatever effort you put into certain things, as long as it's intelligent effort as well, because I think you can put effort into the wrong areas, which is by the by. But generally, when you're talking about their kind of emotional energy you put into relationships, etc., you generally get that back from people as long as you're working with people who are in the same mindset as you, and finding that tribe and that support network, like you say, is really, really important.
Yep. Yep, absolutely. And I think when it comes to relationships, one of the most important components, and this was part of my emotional intelligence journey, was sort of stripping off all these layers, all these limiting beliefs, all of these scars that we've put over ourselves to protect ourselves from getting hurt, and allowing that inner child that is inside of you to come out. And many times you haven't seen any sign of that inner child for most of your life.
Mm,
And so there is work that you can do, meditations. Again, the emotional intelligence training was really effective for me to be able to truly figure out who my inner child was. And once you do that, then you're able to express this genuine love that's inside of you to everyone. And your ego and your, again, your unworthiness or your, lack of self respect doesn't get in the way. And so a lot of times it's just if you can just love yourself, what it does is it teaches other people exactly how to love you also. And so, but it really comes down to, I almost think about it sometimes, you'd be like, if I took my shirt off and I just opened my chest and I just stood here and I'm willing to take whatever arrows come my way.
yeah.
And those arrows are going to be mixed with little pieces of love that people are sending my way. You just have to be open to receiving it all and recognizing that you can handle anything if you're just being authentic and you just show your love. And but it all starts inside, and that's the hard work. And that's what we started with when I mentioned about sitting in stillness, feeling your feels. If you can start to do that, your entire world will open up to you, and the relationships will be much, much more fluid and easier, and your ability to express yourself and your feelings. Because let's face it, when you talk about relationships, it's really one word comes to mind, and that's communication.
Yeah.
Communication is incredibly important. And when you can start to really communicate effectively, then you start to have much more successful relationships.
Yeah, I think that's really key, and you can even take that away from personal relationships to relationships within the work environment. If you can't communicate with your patient particularly well, it can be simple as a language barrier. Or I've had a patient previously who was hard of hearing, or eh, things along those lines. It becomes very difficult to have a good working relationship, and once you get past that, then it's stronger. That's what I felt. So there was a patient that we really struggled with initially to communicate with, because she had to lip read. So if we were trying to ask her to do something while we are in the chair, we had to lift the goggles and then kind of turn around so she could see my face, and then we kind of got through it. But I think that creates a stronger bond between the two parties, or the two people who are communicating, and then over time that becomes more rock solid.
Yeah, and communication with if we talk about patients also, communication is very nonverbal too.
Mm,
So again, this speaks to like if you are in a good place emotionally, energetically, then when you come into the room, even if there is a bit of a language barrier, or even if the patient can't hear as well, there is a feeling of energy that they get from you. And if that feeling is positive and full of love, then the words aren't quite as critical to move forward. And I find that that's something that, if you don't learn about or you don't recognize in yourself, then you have a harder time putting it out there. And so think about that when you enter your operatory, or if you're a student watching this, think about the fact that your energy is as much important as your words. And that can be make your appointments much more successful, make the way the patients accept your treatment if you're in practice much more
Mm.
successful, and ultimately set the stage for a good experience for both you and your patient, which, that's what it's about, right? It's about an experience. I mean, the work is the work, and we always are trying our best and we want to do our best, but it's really about that patient experience under your care with your hands touching them. That's really what it's about. And the more successful you are with that, the more successful you'll be in your practice.
Yeah, can I ask you a little bit more about your personal relationships and how that's helped you throughout periods within your life, whether that's with family, friends? As time's gone on, you've got little ones as well. So, how has that journey been for you, and how has it changed things as you've gone on?
Yeah, so in reality, I think we all, if you look at any human being, if you really look back at your relationship with your parents, oftentimes there's some pain there, and maybe it wasn't evident as a kid, but as you become an adult, and I myself experienced quite a bit of pain in surrounding my nuclear family, my parents, and my sister, and things like that, and I think that much of that is normal, but we all have to process it and deal with it in a certain way. And I think what it comes down to in relationships, especially those really intimate ones, is just forgiveness. Again, if we only have the responsibility to go into our practice and do our very best, well, as a parent, that's all you have too, right? You just do your best. You're not going to nail it perfectly every time. You're not going to always protect your kids from feeling hurt by you, maybe something you say or what have you. So it's really just about doing your very best and showing forgiveness, and also expecting forgiveness in return.
Mm.
So I think forgiveness is a huge part. And in my own personal growth, my relationships with my parents, with my sister, with my family have improved tremendously. So what does that tell you? It tells you that a lot of our issues in relationships really are inside of our own skin.
Yeah.
And if we can address ourselves and address those things, then again, outwardly, the relationships improve. Because to me, relationships are a lot about intention. If I have the intention that my relationships are healthy, then whatever it takes to create that will happen. But if I want to hold on and harbor ill feelings and resentments and things like that, which as a human being are quite natural to do,
Yeah.
then it's going to relationship. So intention and forgiveness. And again, having that ability to be in touch with that inner boy, that little boy inside me that just wants to love everyone and just wants to help other people. I've really truly found that little boy a couple years ago, and I haven't let go. And some days I have to work harder to sort of connect with that. But when you can connect with your inner child, the entire world will open up for you. It's amazing.
I think it's really interesting you talk about intention, where and this is from my religion actually. It's very something very similar that is kind of said is your intention is almost key, and if you have a good intention, you're given like a reward for the intention, and then again for the actual act of the good thing that you're thinking. But if you have a bad intention and you don't act upon it, you're not negated in any way. It's only if you then carry through, and it's all about people will have a bad intention at times because that's human nature. It's whether you have that self control and kind of thing within you to stop it, you know, manifesting in the physical world and doing something which is going to harm others or be detrimental to society, whatever it might be. I think that's something that's always been in my head. You always have that thought or something in your mind. It's just whether it comes to fruition, and it's a good way of kind of for me um to kind of hear that actually you're going to double up if you always think good, do good, better.
Mm. But it's normal to not always
Yeah.
think good and want to do good. And the big tool that I try to work with, and I continue to try to work with this, is asking yourself questions. Asking the universe questions. So if you have a bad intention or you're feeling, a lot of it comes with, like, FOMO, right? Fear of missing out, or comparison.
It's a big
Comparison,
one.
especially in this internet social media age, is devastating. You look at someone and you just think, oh, they're doing so much better than me, or oh, their cases look so much better than me, or they're but the reality is everyone is doing their thing. Like, we have to realize that we're in our own journey. There is no comparison. They say comparison is the robber of all joy.
Mm,
So comparing yourself isn't the way to go. But back to what you were saying, if you do have the feeling of like, oh, I feel this bad intention, you say to yourself, well, why do I have this bad intention? What is the feeling
yeah.
inside of me? Close your eyes, take a breath. Why do I feel this way? Like why do I not want Jabir's podcast to be so successful? Like why? And and of course you know that I
Yeah.
do. But what it comes down
Of
to is
course.
what we really should do is flip the script and say, well, hey, Jabir's got this great podcast. He started it out of an idea in his head. I'm so impressed by that maybe I can use that as the inspiration to start my own podcast. I mean, if Jabir did it, why can't I do it? And you know what? I bet if I asked Jabir, he might actually give me some tips on how I
Mm,
can do it. And so this is the issue that as humans we always have to endure is just unfortunately, Jabir, we learn this way.
yeah.
So you talk about religion giving you this great sense of intention and sort of a double reward for good intention and a minus reward for bad
No, no, there's
intention.
no
But
minus
in
reward. So
reality,
that was the point.
oh,
Um,
I
so
see.
it's like
Okay.
it's accepting that as humans you're gonna have that bad feeling sometimes, but there's only some sort of comeback if you act upon it. But the intention of good is
Got it.
always given, even if you don't carry through on the act. It's like, oh, I intended to give that money to charity, just didn't get around to it. But you had the intention there.
So I like that. It's
Yeah.
acceptance, which is huge. So anyway, I don't remember how we got down this rabbit hole. I think that when you are able to, again, like I said, when you are inspired, you can be inspiring. So it's really important for us to look at others, especially online, especially our peers, our contemporaries who are crushing it. And instead of feeling jealous, say to yourself, you know what? If they did it, I can do it too. And what I found is the most successful people in the world, if you really pay attention, they are desperately trying to share with you how they became that way,
Mm,
because universally, the more we give, the more we get. And you were saying that as well earlier. So, the giving is the most important function we have. And if you can get into a mindset of giving, you get back in multifold what you gave. And that's beautiful, man. I mean, that's the way the universe really works. So, anyway, beautiful, man. This is a great conversation. I love it.
yeah, I remember there's a quote I think about jealousy as well, where it's either it's built upon insecurity or it only harms the holder. So if you hold that
Mm-hmm.
jealousy, it's only going to harm you. Or if you have that jealousy, it's built out of your own insecurity. So really, if you are feeling that way, you like you say, you need to look at, well, why is that, and is there something that Brett's doing? There's someone that Bloody Tooth Guy's doing. There's someone that these Dr. App is doing that I want to be doing that I haven't, and what's stopping me?
Yeah, and usually again it's within your own skin. And that's one of the things the tools that I've learned, the most basic thing is, can you just allow yourself to sit in stillness? That means essentially meditation. It can be something simple like just closing your eyes. There's no massive skill to meditation. In fact, Vishen Lakiani, who I've been mentioning a lot because he's so inspiring to me right now, he talks about, instead of calling it meditation, call it transcendent practice. Some type of transcendent practice, whether it's just taking 6 deep breaths, whether it's closing your eyes and just trying to sit in stillness,
Mm,
but allowing yourself to literally let things come up. Because what happens is it's almost like we hold these bubbles, these big heavy rocks of pain inside of us, and we don't want to address them because it hurts. But if you just did address them, what happens is they just fade off into the ether, and they create space for things to fill in, like self-worth, self-love, lack of judgment. And if you're looking at your life and being like, God, I want, like, my whole life I was like, I want to like do something great, like I want to, but it was like being trapped in a room and not being able to find the door. And then ultimately, when I hit my period of burnout, that was when I found the
yeah,
door and I walked through it. And then you start to realize that if you're really, and again, go back to intention, if you really had the intention that you want to do good, you want to make the most out of your life, all of a sudden these doors start popping up just when you need them. It's about faith and certainty that when you need a person, a resource, a doorway to open, financial windfalls, whatever it would be, just have faith that they will show up at the exact moment you need them. But it's faith, faith and certainty, and that sometimes is hard to hold on to because we want the physical evidence right now. But it's good stuff, man. This is just the universe working. When you start to tap into
Yeah.
that, then the magic starts to really
Yeah,
happen.
it's very interesting that you say that because we've not spoke about this particular topic before, have we? You and I. But there was either someone I was speaking to or a podcast I listened to, and it was very, very similar. You can go through life, and bad things can happen to you, and you can have these feelings that you don't resolve, and they'll build up and build up and build up until you crack. But the whole point of this meditation was to resolve that feeling. Until you resolve it, you can't get past it and then move on and upwards with your life. And what was interesting in that particular talk I had, or I can't remember, I think it must have been a podcast, probably a Joe Rogan podcast, knowing me. um the issue in the modern world is that we, if I'm doing some video editing, I've got Netflix on in the background, or I've got another podcast on, or I've got someone on the phone, and there's never a moment where everything's off and you're in silence. And that can be maybe some of the issue that we have with younger people. There's always an AirPod in, and music blaring. And something really interesting was, he said, look, I think it was David Goggins, must have been it must have been him. He said, look, you can't work out with your headphones on because it's cheating. If you're running with headphones in, it's cheating if you've got some beats, because the beat is it's helping you pace your run. But if you turn that off, then it's you and the road. And then you've really got to work. And if you can really work in that silence, there's nothing else but you and the road fighting against each other, then you're really getting over something. And in the same way, that meditation, until you turn everything off and sit out in the cold, in the dark, or in the silence, those unresolved feelings aren't going to come to the fore. You're not going to feel those feelings. Until you feel the feelings, unfortunately, you're not going to get past it and feel good.
Yeah, and another analogy similar to that that I love, I think it was from Michael Singer, a book on law of attraction, is, he was sort of like, life is flowing through you. Imagine a flow of light just going through you. And when you can process your emotions and you can, accept what happens and move on to the next moment, then life continues to just freely flow. But when you hold on to something, right? Now you have this rock of pain here. Now, as life is flowing through you, what happens? It always has to deflect off of that
Mm.
pain. So now you've created a new ebb and flow to how life is flowing, all because you have something sitting here. So you need to figure out how to make that disappear. And what's crazy and what's is when you just allow yourself to sit in it for a minute, 30 seconds, an hour, it just it evaporates. The pain will go away. But we're so afraid of pain. We've been taught to be afraid of
Mm.
pain, the same way we've been taught to be afraid of death. And if we can just accept that they are beautiful teachers, then we can just move past it. And when you let that go, you create space for all this other beautiful, all these beautiful feelings and things to happen. And so it really all starts within. It all starts with us understanding ourselves and learning how to process our feelings. And unfortunately, we're not taught this. So you get down into very bad habits very quickly at a young age when you're just trying to cope and you're just trying to get by. But do you want to survive in life? Like that's basically what we were describing, or do you want to thrive? And that decision is only yours to
Yeah,
make.
and I think you're talking about pain very nicely walks us into the next subject, or the next part of this whole living a life worth living, which is your physical fitness. So the whole thing, no pain, no gain, and a lot of people, um, certainly I've seen, in people when they've gained a lot of weight, they have this fear of not eating. I don't know whether you've seen this, oh, but now I feel hungry and that's uncomfortable to me, so I should eat so I feel comfortable again. It becomes a cycle, and it doesn't help you. And the same thing with exercise. Exercise when you're not fit, it hurts because those muscles are being stretched and used in a way that they haven't been used in a long time, and it's uncomfortable and painful. And for some reason in our modern times, again, a lot of this I think is down to modern times in a way, the way we've changed the way the world works. No one's doing physical activity all day every day, and hard toil. But that's now it's now we're conditioned a little more to avoid pain at all costs. Oh, look for the nice comforting cereal, nice comforting cup of coffee with 4,000 calories, and whatever it might be. In your particular case, whoever's listening and watching.
Well, I think a lot of what you're describing was some of these eating patterns is the
Mm,
numbing. We often numb with food. That's why it's called comfort food. So we use these things to make us feel good, as a way to sort of just put a little sugar on top of some pain, so it's easier to swallow. And so those are things that you have to address one to another and each individually. But when it comes to exercise, my transformation part of my life, which started in about August of 2018, it also changed the physical fitness, because what we do is we take pain, emotional pain, and the emotions become stored in our
mm,
bodies as physical ailments. So for me, it was my left shoulder. For a long time, it was my lower back. Constant pain. So I got to the point where I couldn't even really work out, because I was A, feeling so much pain, and B, felt like the working out made the pain
yeah,
worse. And when I started this journey, and I mentioned a friend of mine, his name's Todd Weinstein. I'm forever grateful for him. He took me to the Summit of Greatness in Columbus, Ohio. It's a Lewis Howes event, and that's when I really started to be like, wow, personal growth is like, this is amazing. Like, they were talking about living big and dreaming big and just acting on the things that you want to accomplish. But it does have a mental and a physical component, and that was really when I was introduced to yoga. So for me, I think every body, every person, and as you go through life, it changes. Like, I was always into working out. I always lifted weights. I always did cardio. And as I got older, especially as an endodontist, I found that sometimes it was more pain on my body than benefit. I also think that we oftentimes, as younger adults, we are working out because we want to look
yeah,
good, to again boost our chances of finding a mate. But really, that outward exercise that we're doing to build our bodies, it doesn't always make us feel better as a person and build our self-worth inside. So it's finding that balance. And for me, at age 43, at that time, yoga just like hated doing yoga. It was extremely difficult for me at first, but I stuck with it. It has a mental and a spiritual and emotional component. My body looks better than it ever has. I feel better than I've ever felt. And so I combine, different things. They say, if you read articles from older people, they say the most important things to focus on your body are flexibility and strength. And
yeah,
that's really what yoga does for you. So I do a lot of different the dental yogis taught me, they're called CARs, controlled articular rotations. So a very simple routine that you can go through every morning to really put movement back into every single joint in your body. I do yoga, I do cardio, I do a lot of breath work. Breath work is one of those moments. If you're not really into meditating per se,
yeah,
getting into some breath work sessions can really bring things out. And I think, especially in COVID, the stronger we keep our lungs and the circulation in our lungs, the more defense we have against this horrible virus. So to answer your question, my exercise is wide ranging, but it's completely in sync with my spiritual growth and
yeah,
my mental emotional growth. And so I think everyone needs to find that balance. But the key is are you exercising so that you look good and strong, or are you exercising so that you are good and strong?
yeah.
And that to me is a distinction. And I know you're a beast, man. You've been crushing it in the gym. I love
I've
your
been walking
videos.
recently, actually. The last month I was just doing walks, but yeah,
Nice.
I'm back in the
Nice.
gym. I've had the old jab recently, so I'm waiting a couple
Ah,
of days for it to settle, and then I'll be back in the gym.
how
Uh,
do you feel otherwise? Any other problems?
I've got a couple of extra toes now. I'm not sure what that's about, but I'll let
Which one was it? Was it Pfizer or Moderna, or which
Pfizer,
one?
yeah, Pfizer. So I was quite lucky that they're actually overfilling a lot of the vials, and I was able to get squeezed in because they needed people because they didn't want to waste a single dose. They couldn't get more of the elderly in because they can only guarantee five. So
Mm,
people who are in the hospital are getting all theirs done first, and then if there's extras, then a couple of people here and there are getting them as well. So I was very lucky there. Um,
good for you. Good for you.
yeah, so we'll. we'll hopefully see how that goes. Um,
Yeah,
have you had yours?
I'm supposed to get it on Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Yeah,
Your arm's going to be sore. Your shoulder is going to be pretty
yeah.
throbby. I would say.
When you put a frozen injection into the skin, that stands to reason that you're going to feel that way. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's all part of it. When as a dentist, you'll find that you have this incredible capacity to walk into an operatory, sit down at the chair, and it really doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if you feel sick, if you're hurting. It just you're so focused. The epinephrine and the adrenaline gets going. So I've worked through so many manner of different circumstances, and some days at the end of the day, you're like, how did I do that? But again, it's intention, right, Jabir? It's
Yeah,
intention.
that's the thing, and you have to really enjoy what you're doing or be in tune with the treatment you're doing. And that's of course why I'm definitely looking down the endo route because I think I've got that.
I
Um,
know you.
moving on from the health and fitness because I think we could both of us could talk all day on that, and I've literally done a podcast with a graduated dental student very recently where we spoke for 3 hours about the gym. So let's not redo that.
Yeah.
um,
But if you haven't tried yoga before,
I
highly
have, yeah,
recommend. Easy to do on YouTube. I just do it in my basement off of YouTube. There's a million different classes, different levels. But even just the tiniest bit, even just 10 minutes of yoga has so many benefits that are really important. And if you do like working out, you like bulking up, being strong, yoga is a beautiful complement because a
yeah,
muscle can't reach its fullest strength unless it can stretch just as much as it can contract. And
totally.
so I find yoga to be really great.
Yeah, there was one I did. I think it's always yoga with Adrian. She's a very
Yeah,
big
yeah,
one, right? But there was another
yeah,
one. There was a guy, and it was all about shoulder rotations and keeping your shoulders healthy because, as we know, a lot of gym work is heavily based on your delts. And there was one where he has you lie flat and see if you can touch your hands to the floor, and I couldn't.
yeah.
And
Sure, it takes work, but I also like my go-to is yoga with Tim on YouTube.
oh, I'll check that
Tim
one.
Sinensi, great guy, and he's a really good teacher. He's always teaching and explaining as you're doing the
Mm.
classes, and I find the level to be really comfortable for me.
Yeah, I have tried a few. I should be a bit more regular with it, but I was quite enjoying it, and I'm doing them right before bed. I think that's the best time for me to do it because I can kind of unwind.
Sure,
And as you know, I'm
sure.
I'm I'm going non-stop, so it's good to have that 15-20 minutes to let things roll off. Um,
There's no bad time for
yeah,
yoga. It fits in anytime in the middle of your day at work. Like it's
and as you
beautiful.
say, it's complementary to weights because it helped with injury prevention, recovery, all these things. Um, so yeah, that's definitely a good one, and Pilates as well. But I don't really know much about Pilates.
Yeah, I've never done that, but I know that also, using your body weight and certain, yeah, you need equipment for that. The beautiful thing about yoga is all you need is a TV
Yeah,
and desire to do it. There's no equipment involved, which is
yeah,
great.
you just need the spongy mats so your knees don't get destroyed.
Yeah, right, right.
um, when we talk about all these things, giving back is something that you're very big on. Um, and I've done that. I'm trying to do that with the whole RCF thing. I'm trying to get involved with those guys as much as possible. How has your way of doing that been?
Oh, it's been amazing. I mean, I've again acted on things that I always wanted to do. One of the biggest first steps for me was I always had, since I was a student, I always wanted to go on an international dental mission. I always wanted to, but I was scared. I felt a lot of fear. Initially it was, I was too busy with school. Then when I got into practice, I didn't want to leave, could lose income, could get sick, could get hurt. How safe is it? And so all these things that you can talk yourself out of something like that. But in the midst of my emotional intelligence training, we had to make certain declarations to ourselves. And one of them for me was, I want to do an international dental
Mm,
mission. And as I was saying about the universe sort of lining things up for you, like within 3 months, I was in Jamaica doing the mission. And it was one of the most incredible experiences of my life. I was actually reflecting on it a bit yesterday, just how meaningful and powerful, how many friends I made from it. I had a near death experience while I was there, quite honestly. My wife and I were talking about this
well,
just
I'm
last
sure we'll
night.
have to hear a little bit more about that then.
Yeah, well, in the mission was on one side of the island of Jamaica, and the dental school was on the other. And I had this idea that I wanted to, just like you, I wanted to do as much as I could possibly do while I was there. So at the last day of the mission was a day off. And I thought, well, I'm not going to take a day off. I'm going to go to dental school and lecture and teach the students. Well, the commute from where I was to where I was going was started in the middle of the night with a driver who was very tired, and he
Mm,
actually fell asleep at the wheel. And when if you've ever been to Jamaica, especially, in the outskirts, not in Kingston or Montego Bay, I mean, you're talking about dirt roads that are bumpy, there's no lights. And he fell asleep and he started to veer off the road. And I had to reach forward. And it was like, it was like being in the UK. I had to reach over into the right seat. I
we
couldn't even
call it the
get to
correct
the guy
seat.
right in front of me. I had to go tangential, and I woke him up and he slammed on the
Oh
brakes.
god.
And but it was just like that. But that's life, right? Like, so I carried on. I wound up having a euphoric day because part of my mission is to educate dentists around the world, how to do endo so that more patients can save their teeth.
Mm,
And so this was my vision. So a near death experience wasn't going to stop me. And it was a great lesson, on how to just accept, like, you know what? I didn't, I, it was okay.
yeah.
It all worked out. Like, the universe had my back. So that was one of them. But I also felt really compelled that if I was going to try to help people in a different country, what about in my town here in Chicago? And so we have a free clinic through the Chicago Dental Society Foundation. And I thought to myself, you know what? These people need endo, and the endo that they're getting, quite honestly, wasn't of the highest level. I was like, you know what? How difficult would it really be? I could get a microscope there, I could get all the equipment there. And why can't we give these patients the best specialist endodontics that we can give in our offices right in this clinic? So, you know what? I had the intention. I clicked off. I got a lot of corporate sponsors that helped me out. They donated equipment. People helped me out. And next thing you know, I've got a whole endo suite at this free
Mm,
clinic. And I go there. Before COVID, I had a better rotation of
yeah.
endodontists. I think some people are still sort of getting back in the groove. But that was just another easy way that I could give back. But then I try to give back in a lot of different ways, whether it's time, money, just energy, even just right now, like, this is service, right? We're doing this because we hope that if you're listening and watching this, that you get something that helps you. That's giving. So, read an amazing book that you will love, Jabir. It's called A Happy Pocket Full of Money.
Need a pen.
Don't let the top
Send me
fool you.
the list
I
afterwards
will.
actually because I haven't got a pen to hand.
Don't let the don't let the title fool you. It's about
Right.
wealth, how to create it, but not just the money. That's almost meaningless, if I dare I say that. Wealth in relationships, in friendship, in how you feel about yourself, in health. And in there they talk a lot about how giving is literally the most important act. And the more that we give, the more we get back, and the ripple effect of that giving, then others give. And giving is a huge part of the human condition. So I try to give back in a multitude of ways, some that I can't even describe, like little things, big things, any way that I can. And I think that when you start to live your life in terms of giving, it does two things. It really opens you up to the idea that you have some power in this
Mm,
world, like you have the power to change the world. But I would also caution everyone to hear this. One of the things that a lot of us struggle with is receiving, right? So if someone pays you a compliment, you're like, oh no, it was no big
I
deal.
hate
Or
it.
if they
Yeah.
give you a gift and you're like, oh no, you shouldn't have done that. But here's the thing: one of the best ways to give is to receive. Because, Jabir, if you give me a gift and I say, Jabir, this is so awesome. Thank you so much. Like, I love this. Then I have just given to you, because you, as the giver, get incredible joy from giving.
Yeah.
So if I tell your gift because I can't receive it, then I have taken away the beauty that you've trying to give me. And I also make you feel not as good. So receiving is a beautiful way of giving. I learned a lot of this from my wife because she receives beautifully. And, a lot of people look at it again, it's self worth, it's self value, it's self love. I'm not worthy of your gift. Why are you giving? I'm not worthy. And the person might on the outside look like the most confident, self assured person, but inside the skin, they don't feel that way. And so they push it back. So being able to accept and receive is one of the greatest forms of giving.
Yeah, I can tell you from my own kind of being that not maybe not so much with gifts. Gifts I'm probably a little better with, but when someone gives me a compliment, in my head I'm going, I've not done anything yet.
Mhm.
And maybe that's just like, I don't know, maybe I have got my eye in the sky and head in the clouds sort of thing. Um, but that's something that I maybe struggle with, so I'll try and keep that on board and work through it somehow.
Most people feel that
Yeah.
way, and I always felt that way too, but now I've really worked consciously on my ability to receive. And so if you pay me a compliment, I say, wow, thank you, I really appreciate that, thank you. You can even say, it feels so great to be acknowledged by you, that's
Mm,
awesome. And now you've literally accepted this beautiful gift of love, and the person that gave it to you now is filled with a beautiful sense of giving. And so it's again, it's one of these weird things. We unfortunately we're taught an awful lot in our lives, but as far as I can tell now, later in life, none of it is what's important. This is what we, and that's
yeah.
again back to Vishen Lakhiani, the founder of Mind Valley. His thing is the number one most important thing in every single person's life should be transformation and growth before anything else, because from that everything blossoms. Your relationships, your all the things we're talking about. So he also wrote a book that I'm reading right now. It's called The Buddha and the Badass, and it's a great title for the idea that we can be Buddha and badass all at the same time. And that's the track that he's taken in his life, and he gives you a very intimate look at his own struggles as he's facilitated through the business world, etc., and finally settled on Mind Valley, which is essentially an online curriculum on transformational
Yeah.
growth. And so this is what I'm about. This is what I love. This is what lights me up. I mean, endo lights me up, and I enjoyed learning it, but the amount that I'm learning and the level of enjoyment of learning about transformation and personal growth is off the charts for me. And the two go together. To do endo, you have to be healthy in these other
Yeah.
ways because it's so challenging. And so that's why in my teachings, I always like to incorporate personal growth with the endo, as you experienced in Chicago when you took my
Yeah,
course.
the
So it's great.
I'll be honest, when we did the meditation minute, I'd not really done anything like, certainly not in a lecture theatre, and I definitely felt weirdly, because I know everyone else is probably the same, but weirdly self-conscious, as like, well, is everyone else closing their eyes and all this sort of thing.
And that's beautiful. And the truth is that was I had done in other courses, smaller
Mm,
courses. I had done, where everyone takes a few deep breaths, maybe shares what they're grateful for. But as Jabir will know, this was a big lecture hall, and I had this idea, and I knew it would make everyone uncomfortable. So the first time I did it in the
yeah.
morning, I watched, and most people did close their eyes, which I was actually surprised about. But I could sense some discomfort, and I was watching, but I did it again when we came back for the second half of the day after lunch. And now that everyone had sort of experienced a touch of it, when I did it after lunch and I opened my eyes, everyone was eyes closed. Everyone had already felt a different level of comfort with understanding that they were going to do a little meditation in the course. And it was a beautiful learning lesson for me, which is to say that if you can expose a human being to something that's so natural, even if they're not, have never experienced it before, they'll take to it like a fish to water. And so that was a beautiful day. That was my absolute favorite, most enjoyable, fulfilling lecture experiences that day. And unfortunately, it was the last time I was live. That was the last one I did. So I guess I left on.
Do you know what's really strange? Because obviously that was it the last lecture I went to? It met one of the last ones, because I think I had went to something the day after, which I was a little underwhelmed by. But we'll not get into that because they might know you and they might see it. But then the same sort of thing happened, because I'm a big football fan, and a couple of weeks later, before everything went to crap, we went to a game, um, and there was a last minute goal in the 94th minute. So we're in added time, extra time, and I think a lot of people in the ground kind of had this inkling, because cases were rising in Italy. We kind of had this idea that actually the next game at home in the home stadium isn't for 2-3 weeks. This is it. That's the last one. And it was weird because no one left after the 90th minute, and we just beat Man City, which is the big crosstown rival, and everyone was just clapping the team as they walked around and stuff. And I think everyone kind of knew in a way, Wow, that was an incredible game. This is the best atmosphere I had in years, honestly, years, maybe 10 years since I've had that kind of an atmosphere in the game. And the same thing, like you kind of had this idea that actually this is the last one for a while, and we've still not been back yet. So
Yep.
it's weird that the same things happened with your lecture, that's been the best one, but not been back yet.
Yeah. Yeah, and I actually had a dream the other night about lecturing. I last year I lectured live, especially last fall, about 12
Mm.
times, and then just twice in 2020 before everything happened. I had, canceled a slew of them. Fortunately, I'm very active teaching online, and that was a vision I had a couple of years ago that I brought to fruition. But the energy of being in a room with other people is so powerful. And that's something that we're all missing now, which is why I think it's such a great time to go inside, explore ourselves now. We do reincorporate back into groupings and collecting together. You're going to show up as such a better version of yourself. So really, really a good time to go in and study and learn yourself.
Yeah, and kind of moving on to the last little cluster of ideas that we wanted to discuss today, was the environmental. I know we've talked about giving back and spiritual sort of spirituality in a way, and we've touched on a lot of these things already, actually. But has your environment affected you in any way? And I don't know whether that's going to be to do with green energy and that kind of thing, or purely, um, the sphere around your home and how you deal with a garden or something like that. Is that something that changes how you experience the world for you?
Yeah, I think nature ultimately is our greatest teacher
Mm,
in medicine. And so the more that you start to recognize, like, so for instance, I had this vision again through Ram Dass and through I've done a lot of virtual retreats with the dental yogis this year, really exciting events virtually, but talking a lot about nature. And, for most of my life, I always saw the human beings function in nature as very destructive, quite
mm,
honestly. You see the rainforest being chopped down, you see global warming, all the pollution, littering, even little things like that. But then you start to look at, like, well, what is our real purpose as humans in nature? And I started to have this sense of, you know, all these other animals and beings, they all have their purpose. But what a human can do that no one else can do is they can really take in and feel and recognize the beauty in nature. So what if our function is that we look at nature and we say, "Wow, you are so beautiful. Like, I acknowledge, like, this is amazing. Like, I love being in the presence of these gorgeous colors and trees and mountains and streams and oceans." And maybe that's where we bring the health back to nature, is
mm.
by nurturing it, acknowledging it, just
Preserving.
like we want to be. And so, yeah, so I think the natural environment is huge. I think we've all, as humans, created a much better relationship with this COVID situation. Like now, and one of the reasons I'm so concerned about mental emotional health is that for most of the COVID period, we were outside and we enjoyed the summertime and we were able to get out outdoors. Now in Chicago, it's very
Yeah,
cold. There's snow on the ground. It's much more difficult to get
we
outside.
just had
And
snow
so
today.
you feel, yeah, oh, did
Yeah.
you? Nice. So yeah, so nature, but also speaking into environment also is, I think, the recognition that sometimes toxic relationships, they need to end.
Mm,
We don't. I always like to say, friendship is not a lifetime contract. It's not a lifetime contract. And sometimes we hold on to friendships, relationships, even love interests that truly don't serve us and make us feel good about ourselves. And so, if you want to increase your self worth and your self value and your self love, you have to also recognize that you have an opportunity to cut off things. And there's a great book called Necessary
mm.
Endings. And it's the idea that a rose bush needs to be
Trimmed.
tended, because the buds that aren't going to make it need to be clipped so that the energy can flow to the things that are successful. And so sometimes we have to say goodbye to toxic relationships. So in an environmental standpoint, that still counts, even though it's not your physical
Yeah.
environment. But I think that's another big thing, is like, and it doesn't mean you have to hurt someone's feelings and end it, but sometimes you have to end your relationship with how you perceive that relationship, or you don't have to give it so much focus. But we really want to be around people that make us feel good about ourselves, that believe in what we believe in ourselves, so that they can see your greater vision and constantly be encouraging you. And this is where the term tribe
Yeah.
comes in. Tribe is a new term for me. I've been really lucky to find a wonderful tribe of dentists through the dental yogis called the Revive Tribe. And I mean, these people inspire me. They support me. We're going through life now together, and it's just been a beautiful, beautiful thing. So the key is start within, but then as you start to do that, start to find those people around you that you would consider your tribe, and really connect with them and share with them and be vulnerable with them. And next thing you know, your whole environment really
Yeah, I
changes.
think that's really important. I don't know if anyone who's watching or yourself caught the New Year's Eve show we did. And weirdly, everyone that came on, for the most part, we had all the same interests. And I don't know if that's because, I put myself out in a certain way, and it seems to be attracting the people that enjoy the same things that I enjoy, like to do the same things. And we had a great chat for 4 hours because we couldn't be together as friends on New Year's Eve, so we decided we'll do it virtually for everyone to watch.
It's awesome.
But yeah, that makes sense. We all want to go out and make travel videos, and all dentists in this case, and do some really nice treatment, photograph the treatment or document the treatment in a creative way. And for you, it's slightly different, obviously, but you found your kind of way, and I'll maybe find my own sort of a group of individuals who want to do things the same way.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that, but environment. When you ask a question like that, it has a lot of facets
Yeah,
to it.
that's why I was
You
struggling
know.
to kind of keep it as open ended as possible.
Yeah. No, it's a great, great question. All the questions have been awesome.
Mm.
Really, really well thought out.
Yeah, it's funny you say talk about cutting relationships as well. It made me think of that joke, when the patient goes to the doctor and says, "Doc, it hurts when I do this." He goes, "Don't do that then." Just stop doing that if it's hurting you. Just step away
Right.
from that person or that situation. Um,
Yep.
yeah, last couple because I know we've taken a lot of your time. Adventure. You already talked about going on the mission trips, but I think to have that kind of fulfilled life, there's got to be some sort of adventure in there, some sort of creativity. So these three kind of bits that I'm really looking forward to as kind of what I want to build a lot of my core values around is having, as well as all the other things that I've already kind of spoken about, is going out and creating, having a creative output, whether that's Instagram and YouTube, um, and building up skills, whether that's videography, whether it's asking the right questions to the right guests, and then kind of going on this little journey with them every time I go live. How have you found those particular things for you?
Yeah, so I think adventure, ultimately we usually think of it as some grand gesture, some grand act. And I like to look at adventure more in sometimes a micro sense, just like you said. Like I remember the first time I went on Instagram Live, my heart was beating, man. I was beating. I started having ideas just like you. I did something called Three Questions with Dr. Brett Gilbert, where I'd invite colleagues on and interview them. I did this thing called the Endo Files, like little 1 minute videos. That was my
Yeah,
entree into adventure because it was exciting and it was new, and it was something new for me, but also I think new for endodontics. No one had really done that before. So we have this thing called neuroplasticity in our minds. And for us to constantly be growing, we have to create new neural pathways. And so that might be listening to some type of music that you've never listened to before, and that opens up new neural pathways. It could be, looking at a YouTube or a TEDx about some topic that you've never learned about
yeah,
before. So adventure can be very small. It could be trying a new food. There's so many different things that you can do. One of the biggest adventures that I was really resistant to, which and they say the more you resist is means that you need that thing the most. And for me, it was journaling. So I find journaling to be a great adventure. It's sort of like you sit down with your pen and your paper, you start to write, and maybe it's as simple as a few things you're grateful for or something you want to accomplish. And that creates an adventure on the page. That's where a lot of my great ideas are born, or where I hash things out. So it could be as great as doing some physical feat. What is Jess? I don't know if you ever followed Jesse Itzler. He's
You're
amazing.
gonna have to
He
send me
is
a
just
list of all these things you mentioned today. Uh,
Jesse Itzler's amazing, but he talks about, I can't remember what he calls it, but basically doing one thing every year that you don't think you can accomplish
can you
physically.
guess mine from the last
And
year? Can
you
you
did
guess
what?
mine from the last year?
I did.
No,
What was it?
can you guess it?
Oh, can
Yeah.
I? Oh, yeah, it was the 24-hour
Oh no,
podcast.
no, it was podcasting full stop actually.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
my big
Wow.
issue, or my perceived issue maybe, was that I'm not good at conversation.
Wow.
So
See?
what do?
And
You
look at
start a
you.
podcast and talk to people you never spoke to before.
Yeah.
And I hope for the guys who've been watching me from day one, I hope I've got better. It's been we're now on number 42. I hope it's got
Of
slightly better
course you have.
by now.
Sure have. I mean, anything you continue to do, you get better. But what I love about you, man, is you always show up genuinely with the intention, just like you said, of getting better, of learning. I really admire all of what you're doing, and you know, even on the day, like talk about adventure. So in that day that you came to my lecture, we had a little lunch break, and no one else came up to talk
Mm.
to me. You came up and you sat down, we started to chat, we started to make some plans on how to
Did I sit
collaborate.
down before I said hi? I can't remember.
I don't
I
even
just
remember. It
plugged
didn't
myself
matter
like so.
because energetically, I was like, hey, I'm always looking to make a
Yeah.
friend. I'm always looking to collaborate. So, so that was adventurous right there, right? Like, an adventure could be acknowledging someone who you wouldn't normally say anything to. If I'm at a store and I see someone doing a great job, I really, sometimes it's not comfortable, but I'll just say, okay, do it. And I say, hey, man, I just want to let you know, I've been watching you. You're doing a
Yeah.
great job. I just want to acknowledge. And you leave the store and you might never think about it again. But that acknowledgement could be the fuel that someone needed to start their own podcast, or break up with someone, or start a new job. Like, you just don't know. So that's why the giving should be just a constant, freely flowing thing. And Jabir, even though you are doing this in a way because it's something that you want to do and create, by doing what you're doing online, you are giving an opportunity. You're giving. Like, I see all these profiles from all these students on Dentists of Insta. I'm amazed at how many of them there
Yeah.
are. I'm also amazed at how many beautiful dentists there are
Do you
in
know
the
what?
world. Like,
I don't select for anything. This is what generally gets sent my way.
it's
And
amazing.
Dr. Vida was actually, she goes to me, oh, can you have some more dentists on? I was like, look, it's been years since I've generally gone out of my way to find anyone. Just you guys, you dentists like who are a little more established, need to start taking the pics. Send them in.
Yeah, I was serious. Anyway, but look,
Yeah.
you've created this outlet for them to self-express and for that to be shared. And I just, so back to where we started. I look at adventure as just really like the title of this, a life worth living, right? Taking some chances, being creative, not second guessing yourself and saying you're not good enough or you're not capable enough, or the biggest one, I don't have time. Time is
Time, like we said, is
the
all we
thing.
have.
So therefore, adventure, yeah, is a huge part of it. It's just how you frame the word adventure. And in my mind, that always used to mean this grand thing like bungee jumping. And now it can be as small as telling someone that did a great job, hey man, great job. I want to acknowledge you,
Mm.
so
Yeah, I think you've summed it up really well. For me, it's kind of creativity and building a new skill. And whether that, like you said, that's a new skill each year or a new skill each week, it's a new skill, and it's that adventure of going on YouTube and working and finding out how to do X, Y, Z, and watching all the tutorial videos and then doing it step by step. And that can be the adventure as well. So it can be as little or big as you want. So what I think we want is the guys who've watched it, if you've made it this far, when the video ends and the comments open up, let us know what your adventure for this year is going to be, what your creative output is going to be, how you're going to give back, what kind of health and fitness work you're going to be doing. All these things that we've talked about, I want to hear your way of getting into it this year.
awesome.
Yeah, and shall we call 2021 the year of gratitude? Because I think that's what everyone needs a little bit of. Um, Having gone through that crazy 2020, you know, where everything seemed to be on fire or something seemed to happen. We've got through it, and I think you've got to be grateful for what we have going forward. And I think that's one of the things that maybe is lacking in society as a whole, and maybe one of the ways that we can have, like we say, a more peaceful, balanced lives is sort of going, actually, you know, this is great, this is good. I wouldn't mind XYZ more, but what I've got's good enough.
Yeah, I mean, I think gratitude is should be part of every day, the theme of every day. And as we're in like the New Year's resolution and setting goals, I came across something on Instagram that I posted on my story, which was instead of setting a goal for the year, setting a theme.
Yeah.
And by setting a theme, it's a different level of like where you're not, setting yourself up for disappointment. So there's lots of different themes. So maybe for you, the theme is gratitude. My theme for 2021 is expansion. I want to take away and continue to take away any type of limitation that I see of myself. A dental student graduated as a dentist, sees himself in that white coat, sees themselves in a box of what they're supposed to do and say and act and be. And I like to continue to strip off those limitations and expand in all the different things. Like, for instance, for two dentists to be sitting here talking about personal growth for an hour and a half, about work-life balance, about meditation, about yoga. These are not things that dentists typically would talk
Mm.
about, but yet it's the one most important thing that we need to be sustained, to be healthy, so that we can walk into that operatory as the best version of ourselves, so that we can help our patients even more. And we have such a ripple of influence based on how many people come to us in an intimate, tight, close relationship, even if it's just for an hour or just for a single root canal. But they then take a piece of you with them, and then they spread it in their workplace, their home. So we have an incredible power as dentists to impact the world. But the first thing is, and for me, this was true, is to recognize and love myself enough and see the worthiness in myself enough to understand that. So then it emanates from me. And if we don't first take care of what's inside of our skin, we can never give that ripple effect. So that's been the biggest shift in my life from age 43 and a half to, as I sit here now, age 45 and a half. And that's a long time that I lived without having any of these to me. And the difference in my life has been just absolutely profound.
Yeah, I don't think I can put it in a better way, and I think we'll probably leave it there. I think this has been really, really enlightening. Hopefully, everybody who's watched at home has found some sort of benefit from it. Go through all those bits and pieces that we spoke about, and hopefully, we'll read your comments and reply and get some ideas of our own. And if people haven't thought of it themselves, maybe they'll see your idea and they'll jump on the bandwagon with that and have something to work to as well as a group. This is Dr. Brett Gilbert who's joined me. Check out his page on Instagram, check out his YouTube channel, and also Access Endo if you want to check out how to do root canals a little bit better than you are already.
For sure, for sure. It's awesome, man. Appreciate the invite. I'm always game for an invite from you, whatever it looks like. And always a pleasure being with you, my
Whatever
friend.
crazy idea I have, I'm sure we're doing
Yeah, I'm,
24.
I'm always game. I'm always
I'm
game.
sure we're doing the 24-hour podcast again, so you'll get the call at some point. Guys, this has been great. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you're new. Have a little look at the Patreon group as well if you want to support the channel and all the stuff that I'm doing. Helps me with nice little bits of gadgets like these microphones. And I don't know if you noticed the camera that we've got now. It's a little bit better than
Very
before.
high. It's very high def.
So
I love it, and I love the good vibes in the background.
yeah, I thought it's I, I think it sums up what this podcast is all about. So yeah, um,
Sums up what you're all about, brother.
thanks.
It's true.
Thank
It's
you.
true.
Guys, that's it from us today. Make sure to join us again for the next ones. Make sure to hit the notification bell because I've got loads more coming. Next week, we've got Dr. Ahmed bin Salman, ABS Endo, and we're going to be chatting a whole host of things. The topic is yet to be released, so watch out for that one.
Yeah, it should be root canals at the highest level, along with culinary and cocktail skills, because he's got skills on everything he
I
does,
do
man.
like his steaks, yeah. So
He's a great friend. He's also one of the Instagram friends that I've actually had a chance to meet in
oh,
person.
amazing.
So Yeah, so I really, really admire Ahmed, and I'll be excited to see that episode. So send him my best when you see
Absolutely,
him.
I will do. That's it from us, guys. Thank